Someone asks you for something, and before you have decided anything, you hear your own voice say yes. Not a slow yes, not a considered one. A yes that arrives about a second early before you have checked your week, your energy, or whether this was ever yours to carry in the first place. You will call that being responsible, reliable, kind, the person everyone can count on. It is none of those things. In that 1 second, your brain ran a calculation you never authorized, and what it was protecting was not the other person. Think about the last time you agreed to something you did not want. You probably remember the request. You probably remember the relief on the other person's face. What you almost certainly do not remember is the gap in between, because it was too short to feel like a decision. But something happened in there. Before your answer left your mouth, your brain had already run the other version. It had already seen the small change in their expression if you said no. The pause, the tightening around the eyes, the 2 seconds of silence that would follow. And it decided that silence was too expensive. This is the part almost nobody notices about people who carry too much. The wait is not the event. The wait is the receipt. The real event happened a second earlier, inside a fast, invisible risk assessment your conscious mind never gets to see. You are not agreeing because you are generous. You are agreeing because something inside you is paying for something. And to understand what it is buying, you have to go back to a world where saying no could genuinely end you. For almost the entire history of your species, you lived inside a group of roughly 150 people. The anthropologist Robin Dunbar found that number surfacing again and again, from primate brain size to hunter-gatherer bands to the size of the villages humans built before cities existed. But the number is not the important part. One detail about that world is, there was no exit. You could not change jobs. You could not move cities. You could not stop answering. The people who irritated you at 19 were the same people who would decide whether you were fed at 40. Every relationship was permanent, and every relationship was load-bearing. In that world, another person's opinion of you was not social. It was infrastructure. In 1971, the biologist Robert Trivers described how cooperation survives between people who are not related. Help given now only makes sense if help is likely to return later. But there is a flaw buried inside that arrangement, and your ancestors lived on top of it every day. You cannot see inside another person. You cannot check whether they will return the favor. You cannot audit loyalty. So the safest strategy was never to keep an accurate ledger. It was to stay slightly in credit, give a little more than you owe, absorb a little more than your share, be the one who is never a problem. Not because it was fair, but because a person who is owed something is a person nobody abandons first. That is not generosity. That is a premium payment on a policy against being left. And that instinct would have stayed manageable, except that one more thing about humans made it far more urgent than it ever was for any other animal. The primatologist Sarah Blaffer-Hrdy spent decades studying how humans actually raise children. A chimpanzee mother will not let another adult hold her newborn for months. A human mother hands hers over within hours. Human infants are so expensive, so slow, so demanding that no single pair of hands could ever have carried the cost alone. We are the ape that raises children in committees. Sit with what that means for a moment. Your survival did not depend on whether people around you were able to help. It depended on whether they wanted to. Willingness, not capacity. And willingness is fragile. Willingness can quietly withdraw without ever announcing itself. So your brain built an instrument for it. A constant low-level reading of whether the people near you are pleased with you. Not once a week, continuously. Running underneath every conversation you have ever had. That instrument is still on. It was on before you read this sentence. But here is where the story turns, and where it stops being about weakness. Because you might assume the urge to help others is the damaged part, that the fix is to care less, to harden, to stop being the person who notices what everyone needs. The research suggests the opposite. Felix Warneken and Michael Tomasello ran a now famous set of experiments with children barely 18 months old. An adult would drop a clothespin or struggle to open a cabinet with full hands. No instruction, no request. Toddlers who could barely form sentences would toddle over and help. They did it for strangers. They did it without being asked. And then the researchers added a reward. Helping went down. The impulse was never manufactured by guilt or training or the fear of disappointing anyone. It arrives clean, early, unafraid. It is one of the oldest and most beautiful things your species has. So if the helping is not the problem, what is? Naomi Eisenberger and Matthew Lieberman put people inside brain scanners and quietly excluded them from a simple ball-tossing game. The regions that lit up were the same ones that process physical pain. Being left out did not register as information. It registered as injury. That is the collision. Somewhere in your development, a clean impulse to help got fused to an alarm system designed to treat disapproval as bodily harm. Two entirely different systems, wearing one coat. From the inside, they feel identical. Both of them say, go, take it, handle it, before something breaks, which is exactly why you cannot tell which weights are actually yours. Now bring that into your week. The ancestral ledger worked because it closed. You deposited into the same 150 people for 40 years, and those deposits came back as food, as protection, as someone watching your child while you slept. The system balanced because everyone stayed. Look at where your deposits go now. Into a manager who will be replaced next year. Into a group chat of people you have never eaten with. Into an acquaintance whose expectations of you have grown quietly for a decade. Into a relative who has been withdrawing since you were young from an account that was never opened in your name. Your brain is still paying premiums on a policy that expired thousands of years ago. Nobody told the alarm. The alarm cannot read a calendar. And here is the test, if you want one. Real responsibility feels heavy while you carry it. Borrowed responsibility feels heavy when you imagine putting it down. Notice the difference the next time. Picture setting something down and watch what your body does. If what rises is a plan, it was probably yours. If what rises is the image of someone's face, it was never a responsibility. It was a payment. None of this makes you weak. It makes you well-built for a world that no longer exists. The instinct that keeps you carrying other people's weight is the same instinct that kept your ancestors from being abandoned in a place where abandonment was fatal. It is not a flaw in your character. It is a very old promise, still being honored to people who are no longer in the room. But an instinct that cannot tell the difference between a hungry tribe and a crowded inbox will keep collecting from you until there is nothing left to give. You are allowed to sort the ledger, not by caring less, by finally seeing which entries you wrote and which ones were written into you. So someone will ask you for something soon, maybe today, and there will be that second again. The small, invisible one, before your voice moves. Do not try to fill it with an answer. Just ask quietly whose silence you are trying to prevent. The weight may still be there when the second ends, but for the first time you will know whose name is on it.